The Second Opium War, fought between 1856 and 1860, was another chapter in the turbulent relationship between China and Western powers. This conflict, also known as the Arrow War, was marked by a series of intense battles and significant political maneuvers. It was a clash of civilizations, a collision of empires, and a demonstration of the growing power of European nations. The British and French forces, armed with superior technology and military tactics, sought to expand their influence and secure more favorable trade terms. This conflict, rooted in trade disputes and diplomatic tensions, would have a profound impact on China's future. The war was triggered by the boarding of the Arrow, a Chinese-owned but British-registered ship, which escalated into a full-scale conflict. The First Opium War, just over a decade earlier, had left China weakened and humiliated. The Treaty of Nanking, which ended the First War, imposed harsh terms on China, including the cession of Hong Kong and the opening of several ports to foreign trade. Forced to open its ports to foreign trade and cede Hong Kong to Great Britain, the Qing Dynasty found itself grappling with internal unrest and external pressure. The internal strife was exacerbated by the Taiping Rebellion, which further destabilized the region. The Second Opium War would further erode China's sovereignty and expose the vulnerability of its imperial system. The Qing dynasty's inability to effectively resist foreign aggression highlighted the need for modernization and reform. This second conflict would be even more destructive than the first, with British and French forces inflicting heavy losses on the Qing military. The capture and looting of the Summer Palace in Beijing by Anglo-French forces was a particularly devastating blow. The war would ultimately force China to make further concessions, deepening the country's dependence on foreign powers and setting the stage for a century of internal strife and external intervention. The Treaty of Tientsin and the Convention of Peking imposed even harsher terms, further opening China to foreign influence and control. At the heart of the Second Opium War lay a complex web of trade disputes and diplomatic conflicts, intricately woven over years of tension and misunderstanding. The First Opium War had opened China to foreign trade, but it had also created friction points that would ultimately lead to renewed conflict. The treaties signed in the aftermath were seen as unequal and humiliating by many in China. Western powers, eager to expand their economic and political influence in China, chafed against what they perceived as Chinese resistance to free trade. They sought not only commercial opportunities, but also political leverage. The Qing dynasty, for its part, remained deeply suspicious of Western intentions. They viewed the foreign presence as a threat to their sovereignty and cultural integrity. The Opium Wars, in the eyes of many Chinese officials, were not about free trade, but about Western aggression and the undermining of Chinese sovereignty. The destruction of opium by Chinese authorities was seen as a necessary act of defense. The Qing court was determined to resist further encroachments on its authority and to maintain control over its own affairs. They fortified their defenses and prepared for the possibility of renewed conflict. The legalization of the opium trade following the First Opium War had also created social and economic problems within China. The widespread addiction to opium weakened the social fabric and drained the economy. The drug's devastating effects on Chinese society further fueled resentment towards Western powers. Anti-opium campaigns gained momentum, highlighting the destructive impact of the trade. Chinese officials, increasingly alarmed by the spread of opium addiction, sought to curtail the trade, putting them at odds with British merchants who profited handsomely from the drug sale. This clash of interests set the stage for further conflict and deepened the divide between East and West. The spark that ignited the Second Opium War came in 1856 with an incident seemingly minor on its surface. This event, however, would have far-reaching consequences, setting the stage for a significant escalation in hostilities between the British Empire and the Qing dynasty. The Arrow, a Chinese-owned but British-registered ship, was boarded by Chinese authorities in Canton, now Guangzhou, on suspicion of piracy and smuggling. The ship's registration under the British flag was a contentious point, as it symbolized British extraterritorial rights in China. 12 Chinese crew members were arrested, and the British flag flying from the ship was hauled down. This act was seen as a direct affront to British sovereignty and their perceived rights under the Treaty of Nanking. The British, outraged by what they saw as a violation of their treaty rights, demanded an apology and the release of the crew. They viewed the incident as a breach of the agreements established after the First Opium War. The Qing officials, convinced they were acting within their rights, refused to back down. They believed that their actions were justified under Chinese law and were unwilling to concede to British demands. The Arrow incident quickly escalated into a full-blown diplomatic crisis, with both sides refusing to compromise. The tension between the two nations grew as neither was willing to appear weak or concede ground. The British, eager to leverage the incident to their advantage, used it as a pretext to launch military action against China. They saw an opportunity to further their interests and expand their influence in the region. France, seeking to expand its own influence in the region and avenge the recent killing of a French missionary in Guangxi, joined the British in their war effort. The alliance between the two European powers added a new dimension to the conflict. The United States and Russia, while not directly participating in the fighting, also sent diplomatic missions to China, hoping to capitalize on the situation to secure their own trading privileges. The international interest in the conflict underscored the global significance of the events unfolding in China.